Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Take two for this episode. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me as always, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on? Again.
What's going on is, we recorded most of this podcast earlier tonight, but it was a little bit of stormy weather here in Phoenix, and the wind knocked out our power mid-recording, so we basically lost our first attempt at this episode. So we're gonna kind of pretend like we haven't talked about most of this movie already and give it another go and see how this shakes out. I was fully ready to just be like, hey, this will just be our lost episode, Angels in the Outfield, just the one that got away, but we'll give it a shot. We're talking Angels in the Outfield as we continue our 90s month here. Specifically, we had our first couple weeks of camp movies. Now we've got our second couple weeks of baseball movies. And then next week we'll wrap things up with Mrs. Doubtfire that doesn't really fall into any of those buckets and is still quintessentially 90s. So our history lesson here, originally released July 15th, 1994. Other releases of the time, we had The Flintstones on May 27th. Do you want to make your joke again, Cameron, or are we just going to roll on through?
Nope, I don't think it was that great of a joke the first time.
Yabba Dabba Don't watch that one? I agree, but...
I was like, if I got a second shot, I'm not going to make that bad joke.
Yeah,
so.
But I still wanted to give you shit for it. So,
That's fair.
I had to sit through it the first time. We had City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold, and Speed on June 10th. Disney's powerhouse movie of the year, The Lion King, June 24th. Little Big League, June 29th, which I went on and extolled at length in our first run of this. This is the movie I was thinking of last week when we were talking about Rookie of the Year, and the idea of like a trick play where like even security guard gets into it and all this stuff, and the line at the end of like, hey, if you do this right, you can date my mom. Even if you don't, you can date my mom, kind of thing. I attributed it to Mighty Ducks, but no, I was kind of realizing, oh no, it was this other baseball kid movie of the era, Little Big League, where a kid inherits the Minnesota Twins at the age of 12. And basically has to be the manager of the team. So he doesn't even get the fun of playing. Although I think there is like a scene in there where he's playing with all the other, the pros. But it was the realization of like, oh, that was the movie I was thinking of. It's not a Disney movie. It wasn't a Fox movie. So it's not in our mix for that D Plus show stuff. But Little Big League. Shout out to just another one of these movies from the era. July 6th was Forrest Gump, another big heavy hitter for that year. And we had, alongside Angels in the Outfield, on July 15th, we had True Lies from James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Jamie Lee Curtis. We had a remake / reboot / version of Lassie on July 22nd. We had The Mask on July 29th alongside Black Beauty, another of those like animal movies of the era. And then we had Clear and Present Danger August 3rd, which is one of the ones I talked about back when we did the Camp Nowhere episode at the beginning of the month, because Camp Nowhere was August 24th. So we're kind of running up against the movies we talked about in that flurry of things as well now. We did the box office breakdown where I had Cameron guess what number it was, but I'm not going to make him do the guessing game again since that's just silly.
It's 34.
It was number 34, yeah. $50.2 million in 1994. So significantly better than Camp Nowhere, which is like 100 and something, 109th, I think. We talked about some other movies around this spot. We had like Major League 2, another one in the baseball realm of things. Was number 47. 48 was Blank Check, right below that. Richie Rich was one of the ones that Cameron guessed, number 43, with 38 million. And then, yeah, like D2 The Mighty Ducks did better than that. D2 The Mighty Ducks was number 38, 45 million. And then, yeah, Angels in the Outfield, number 34, 50.2 million, which is approximately $132.7 million in today's money adjusted for inflation, according to thenumbers.com. Our number one movie that year, of course, The Lion King, big heavy hitter with $988.3 million at the worldwide box office. True Lies, number 3, and The Flintstones, number 4, and The Mask, number 5, and Speed, number 6. So, touching on a lot, and Forrest Gump, number 2. A lot of the movies that hit there over the summer ended up being, as expected, the big heavy hitters of the year. Runtime of 1 hour and 42 minutes, and in the Walt Disney Pictures live action timeline of things, we had, let's see, a year earlier, we had like Hocus Pocus in July of 93, Cool Runnings, October of 93, The Three Musketeers, November of 93. We have, in 94, Iron Will, Blank Check, D2 The Mighty Ducks, and then Angels in the Outfield here, followed by Squanto, A Warrior's Tale in October of that year, and The Santa Claus in November of 1994. And then we got Heavyweights, February of 95. So, and Tall Tale, which we've talked about. I did a solo episode on Tall Tale, but that was March of 1995 there. Roll call, our who's who of the film. The director here was William Deere, who, prior to Angels in the Outfield, directed Harry and the Hendersons. He would also go on to direct Simon Says, a horror film based on the children's game there. And then, keeping on theme, he ultimately would come back and direct The Sandlot, Heading Home in 2007, direct-to-DVD sequel in the Sandlot franchise. The writers here, we have 3 writers credited for the 1951 version of Angels in the Outfield: Dorothy Kingsley, George Wells, and Richard Conlon for the original story. Dorothy Kingsley and George Wells on the screenplay. Dorothy Kingsley, in addition to Angels in the Outfield, was a proprietor of a lot of the musicals of the era, like Kiss Me Kate, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and Pal Joey. Pal Joey, I only know from the Avenue Q song, where the Burt wannabe sings Pal Joey as he's like reading through his 100 musicals of the last 100 years book. George Wells was more the baseball side of things, it would seem, having written the film Take Me Out to the Ball Game, as well as Summer Stock, Three Little Words, Angels in the Outfield, and then later would go on to write Designing Woman. Richard Conlon wrote the original story, and then Holly Goldberg Sloan was the one who kind of helped modernize it here. And there was this element, I forgot to mention this kind of in our initial run, so I'll say it here. Like, as I was reading this and realizing, oh, this was based on a 1951 story, there is a lot that is, like, very 50s era about this. This is very, like, Miracle on 34th Street kind of vibes to this Angels in the Outfield. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes total sense, that, like, this is kind of a movie out of time. Holly Goldberg Sloan wrote Made in America, Angels in the Outfield, The Big Green after this, as well as The Secret Life of Girls. Our cast of characters here, we of course have Danny Glover here as George Knox, having been in things like The Color Purple and the Lethal Weapon series prior to this. Afterwards, he would go on to be in Operation Dumbo Drop around this time, and then in more recent years, he's taken up the banner of things like Sorry to Bother You, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, and Jumanji: The Next Level. Brenda Fricker plays Maggie Nelson here, with credits going back to 1964, including her Oscar-winning supporting actress performance in My Left Foot. She's also, of course, the Pigeon Lady in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, where we've spoken about her in the past. And then she went on to be in So I Married an Axe Murderer and Angels in the Outfield, and then she was in A Time to Kill after that. Tony Danza as Mel Clark here, having been in Taxi and Who's the Boss, both of which he plays the character of Tony. So it just seemed to, like, he had to kind of keep that name to stay in character, I guess. After Angels in the Outfield, he'd go on to be in the show Family Law, as well as the film Don John, where he'd be reunited with Joseph Gordon-Levitt as his dad. Christopher Lloyd here as Al, the head angel, having also been in Taxi, of course, Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, DuckTales, Addams Family Values, Angels in the Outfield, Camp Nowhere, Anastasia, My Favorite Martian, and Kingdom Hearts, to name a few. Ben Johnson plays Hank Murphy, the Angels owner in this one, with credits going back to the 1930s, 1939. Lots of Western stuff, including The Wild Bunch, The Last Picture Show, The Getaway, Bite the Bullet, and then Angels in the Outfield would be one of his late career appearances. J.O. Sanders as the nefarious announcer Ranch Wilder, with credits going back to 1979, including Angels in the Outfield, Kiss the Girls, The Day After Tomorrow, Revolutionary Road, and Edge of Darkness. Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Roger Bowman here. Angels in the Outfield not being his first appearance. He had a few like guest appearances in TV shows and stuff like that, but his first big thing here, Angels in the Outfield. Of course, he would go on to make a name for himself in Third Rock from the Sun, and that long-running sitcom, as well as 10 Things I Hate About You, Treasure Planet, 500 Days of Summer, Inception, 50-50, Dark Knight Rises, Looper, Lincoln, Don John, Snowden, and then a trio of Rian Johnson cameos in Star Wars The Last Jedi as Slow and Low, Knives Out as Detective Hard Rock, and our favorite Glass Onion hourly dong appearance. He's also Jiminy Cricket in the 2022 terrible remake of Pinocchio, and most recently Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. He appears in that. Milton Davis Jr. As JP, maybe unsurprisingly, doesn't appear in too much other things in his IMDb page. A few credits here and there, but this is pretty much his biggest thing. But then he did go on to be in a 2015 College Humor sketch called 30 for 30 Angels in the Outfield, which, when we first recorded, Cameron had not watched, but Cameron was able to sit down and watch in between us, our power going out, and us sitting down to re-record. What'd you think of it, Cameron?
Oh, it was awesome. It was great. Absolutely hilarious. The seriousness that it took with it was phenomenal, but also they're like, this really would have been bigger news, but considering what also happened in sports during 1994, and it went through all of them, including
it hits on
Rookie of the Year,
Mighty Ducks, and all of the
a dog playing basketball,
Air Bud,
it was
because it's not they think they joke is like the 90s were a wild time for sports because Air Bud's I think like 96 or something like that.
Air Bud, they bring up Major League. They bring up all the sports movies from the 90s, and it's hilarious.
The Charlie Sheen Vaughn character. Him having a good year compared to Mel Clark here or whatever. It really should have been amazing, but Mel Clark was overshadowed completely by all the incredible things happening in the 90s. So yes, a fun little sketch out there to go check out. Taylor Negron as David Montaigne here, one of those quintessential like that guy kind of performers, having appeared in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Nothing But Trouble, Angels in the Outfield, Biodome is the thing I probably always think about him from. A Kid in Aladdin's Palace, which ties to last week's Rookie of the Year because Thomas Ian Nicholas went on to be a kid in King Arthur's Court and the straight-to-DVD A Kid in Aladdin's Palace. Taylor Negron was the genie in that film. He's also in Stuart Little, The Flintstones, Viva Rock Vegas, and The Aristocrats. That documentary-ish thing about the classic Aristocrats joke. And then we have our kind of like, oh, hey, they're in this corner of things, with Neil McDonough as the pitcher Whit Bass. This being one of his first things, Angels in the Outfield. He's also go on to be in Star Trek First Contact, Minority Report, Captain America, The First Avenger as Dum Dum Dugan, and then the Arrow Flash DC Legends of Tomorrow series, where he's Damien Dark. And one thing that I watched in between this and that was a listicle of like the 10 worst video game movies, and they shouted out Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, where he is M. Bison. So shout out to Neil McDonough being M. Bison in that one too. Also in Justified, and when we talked about Tin Man, the sci-fi channel like remake of The Wizard of Oz from I don't know 15, 20 years ago now.
It was fantastic, like fantastic show.
Yeah.
He is like the Tin Man example, and that is they're like lawmen, so their badges are made out of tin. It's so good.
Yep. We have a young Adrian Brody as Danny Hemmerling. Another one where it's pretty much one of his first kind of career performances. But then he would go on to be in The Thin Red Line, Oscar winner for The Pianist, King Kong, The Darth Geely Limited, and then he kind of gets into the Wes Anderson school of every Wes Anderson movie ever. And then Matthew McConaughey here as Ben Williams, having really only done Dazed and Confused prior to this, before Angels in the Outfield. And of course, I'd go on to do Ed TV, The Wedding Planner, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, his little kind of rom-com era there. Magic Mike, The Reconnaissance, or the Reconnaissance of Dallas Buyers Club, The Wolf of Wall Street, True Detective, Interstellar, and The Gentleman. And Dermot Mulroney as Roger's father, aka the deadbeat dad of this film that I'd completely forgotten about. Having been in stuff like Young Guns prior to this, then after this, he would go on to make a name for himself in My Best Friend's Wedding and The Wedding Date as kind of the not, what is it? It's always Dermot Mulroney and Dermot McDulney. No, whatever. It's the like the two guys' names that are very interchangeable.
Right. Dermot McCroney and something McDermott.
Yeah. Oh, Dylan McDermott. That's what it is. Dylan McDermott and Dermot Mulroney. So much so that there's, I believe, a SNL sketch about which one is he. He's also in Must Love Dogs, Family Stone, had a fun little like recurring appearance on New Girl for a handful of episodes, and he was the president in last year's Secret Invasion, which I had nearly forgotten about in the MCU, since he's going to be replaced by Thunderbolt Ross and Harrison Ford in the upcoming film. And a little bit of trivia here. The character of Hank Murphy, the Angels' owner, is loosely based on owner, actor, and country music star Gene Autry, right down to the cowboy hat. Autry passed away in October of 1998, and when the Anaheim Angels won the 2002 World Series, they dedicated their win to Autry. The film was not the only connection between Disney and the Angels. 2 years after the film's release, the Walt Disney Corporation bought the Angels and owned the team until 2003. In addition, Walt Disney was one of the Angels' original board members. At the time of its production and release, the Angels, who had entered the American League in 1961, had never won an American League pennant or appeared in a World Series and were best known for their collapses in the ALCS. The Angels would lose their appearances in 1979, 1982, and 1986. 8 years after the film's release, however, the Angels won both the franchise's first AL pennant and the World Series championship in 2002. The film was released in theaters 1 month before the Players' Strike of 1994, which would then cancel the postseason and 1994 World Series. And just within the universe of the film, during the winning streak, the Angels go from a record of 39-52 to a record of 91-64, which means they go on a 52-12 winning streak there. So shout out to the 12 games that they lost, even with the help of Angels cheating for them, as you alluded to in our initial recording.
Yep.
So yeah, Cam, let's try and figure out what we didn't cover before, or even what we did cover before. What did you think about this one? How does it hold up?
This is, I said it before, I'll say it again now. This is the definition of a feel-good movie.
Oh, that's right. You said that before, and the thing I immediately think of is the Mel Clark's "he's got 6 months to live, but we're not going to tell him" kind of like diagnosis at the end of the movie. That is happens. The opposite of feel good movie.
Well, so here's the thing: the reason why is this movie is like built to be here's a cool thing or a happy thing. Like they saw the game and like that's happening. Mm-hmm. They get to go to a game. They come home. Luis is gone.
Yeah,
down. Now it's sad.
It does the wrestling thing of like, we're going to send you home happy.
Yeah, the
kids are getting adopted.
Yeah, the kids are getting adopted. It ends happy. But it is built to be like this like roller coaster of like something awesome is happening, something sad happens, something great is happening, something sad happens. It keeps you on that so you're not just like it. Unlike other films like, say Rookie of the Year or something where they do like just a steady incline towards some like a lot of good stuff, and then suddenly a steep decline, and then it comes out at the end. This one is just ups and downs throughout the entire movie as far as like the emotional whiplash that it gives you. I teared up at some points of this movie, like where you could see Danny Glover's like him
His heart melting.
Yeah, his heart melting and him
degrinchifying.
Yeah, degrinchifying, but also like falling in love with these kids and being like and realizing like I want to be a dad. When he's in the car with him with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, after his dad has like signed away his rights to be the father and like walked out on him, like in a courtroom walked out on him, both figuratively by releasing his rights and also literally by walking out of the courtroom. And we just get the longest. You can see through the slit of the doors. You can see him continuing to walk away and not looking back once. And it is a brutal moment of like how the like director and everything handled that. And it's like, I feel for these kids. These kids are in a freaking like, I don't know how they're in a 1920s slum neighborhood in LA in the 90s, but like with their shantytown house.
That wasn't that bad.
I'm joking. I'm joking because like there's like a broken down 1920s car in the yard.
Sure.
Like anyway, but you see like, you know, Danny Glover's heart melts for these kids as he realizes at first I like when he shows up with his 2-seat convertible and he's like, hop in kids, and I was like, oh, there's not enough seats. And I was like, wait a minute, Cameron, this is the early 90s. People were letting kids stack on top of each other all the time in passenger seats.
Or they just sit in the middle seat, yeah.
Yeah. But then for be like, actually no, it's because his mom and him used to live in a car, and now it just reminds him that his mom like is never coming back for him. And so he hijacks, or he takes the tour bus and like drops him off at home. And apparently he knows how to drive the tour bus, which is rad.
I mean, it's like, yeah, it's probably less of a thing that it was in the 90s, but I think back to like a League of Their Own kind of thing, and like when Tom Hanks drives the bus because that's what the coach did or whatever.
Well, no, he drives the bus because the bus driver quit because that one lady's son annoyed him so much that he almost crashed the bus, and so he quits.
Yeah.
And when the proper etiquette lady comes out to try to stop him, he like insults her so badly that she like can't take it.
Sure. Yeah.
Great. League of Their Own. Phenomenal movie.
Absolutely.
Anyway, but yeah, no, there's like his whole like his heart melting for these kids, and it's just a really wonderful thing to be like, oh, this movie isn't actually about like, are we ever going to be a family again? It's like, no, but you're going to get a new family with a dad who is the manager, soon to be out, no longer the manager of the LA Angels, but like, you know, this guy decides, hey, I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to try to be a dad to these kids. And at the moment that back to mention it, the moment where he's in the car and has that heart to heart with him about like, listen, and I loved it how they didn't go for like my dad took off or whatever. It was my dad couldn't take care of himself, which says like, there's a whole list of things that could have been, but it leaves it to your imagination. Mm-hmm. Of like, my dad could barely take care of himself, much less my brothers and I. And it's like, okay, this guy comes from a family that lived through hard times. He rose above it, became a baseball star, had his career taken away from him, becomes a winning baseball manager searching for his championship team, and ended up with the Angels, who have the worst record. And like his like frustration is palpable through the entire beginning of the movie. But as he loosens up, he believes, he starts having faith, and like you have this like really tremendous, like these really incredible moments that really elevate this film, I feel, into being like one of the best baseball, like one of the best sports movies of the 90s, as far as like in a lot of ways, but also one of the most jarring movies in the modern sense of
I mean, the thing I'll say, and kind of like like slight spoiler for like my grading, this did not hold up for me.
And really?
Is probably the bottom tier of the 90s sports movies for me on this rewatch. And I think like a lot of it is like, yeah, I had very much forgotten the real world like subplots of this one, and like my memory was much more just like, oh, Angels doing fun baseball things. It was like my mind was, this movie is 90 minutes of the ball flying around in the infield sequence.
Now baseball is like maybe 25 minutes of this movie.
This is very exactly. So it's very much like oh no, that's like the baseball in this movie, very boring, very
extremely
like,
boring,
very bad. And yeah, it is, as you touched on kind of in our first go at recording. It is just the Angels are cheating on behalf of this team and doing all sorts of like nonsense stuff.
Yeah, this is not a major league where the team gets better over time. Like there's better 90s sports movies for sure.
Yeah.
But I used to be like, this is not even a decent 90s sports movie. I think it's a decent enough 90s sports movie now, but like for me it is like, as it holds up, for me it holds up better than it did because I hated this movie as a kid. Because it was the deadbeat dad subplot always like really bummed me out as a kid.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a bummer. Yeah.
Also, I could not handle all the sudden drops of like the emotion and the plot of that. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, you help them cheat their way to the pennant, but you won't help them cheat to get the pennant.
Yeah.
Like, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
That's nonsense.
What a silly little rule that you're forcing in here so that the players have to do it their own at the end here. Which, like, I believe this goes back to Little Big League, where I believe they don't win at the end of that one.
Yeah.
I think that's the whole, like, is that the one that if it's the one I'm thinking about, it's like Ken Griffey Jr. fully hits the home run to like fuck over the heroes of the movie and like, nope, the Mariners still win kind of thing. I'm pretty sure it was that one. It's like that, or he did that in Major League too. I don't remember, but it's that kind of vibe, and that would be so much more fitting of an end to this movie of like, hey, they tried, but yeah, they skated by the whole rest of this thing on the talent of cheating angels. So like, hey, everybody believes in them, but you know, Mel's a past his prime guy. He shouldn't be making the strikeout here in the last game of the year or whatever. So but yeah, no, they don't go that route. They go the feel good, like, yay, the team wins, hooray! And they did it on their own, but with the power of faith and / like the kid lying to everybody. Like, yeah, no, here's the signal for angels. You clearly got one. Aha. It's all on you, buddy. So yeah.
So yeah, to answer your question, yes, it
was Junior in Little Big League.
Yeah, it is Little Big League because it's Ken Griffey Jr. and Randy Johnson.
Randy Johnson, right?
Yeah.
I remember loving that when like making the connection that it was Randy Johnson, and he becomes an Arizona Diamondbacks,
right after
later,
the Mariners.
And ends up helping us win our own World Series
in a year where nobody was rooting for Arizona.
Yeah, the year right before the Angels, apparently.
Yep.
Because it was like 2001 was when we won it, when nobody wanted us to, and everybody was suddenly a Yankees fan.
Yeah, everyone's a Yankees fan except Diamondbacks fans
for world-altering reasons.
That's still my favorite sports thing. It's like, hey, well, Cameron, why aren't you a Diamondbacks fan? They won the World Series, and like when you were there, I was like, yeah, in 2001, against the Yankees.
We talked about this, but I remember specifically being at like my homecoming dinner, like in the game that we like just beat the shit out of the Yankees, like 9-2 or something like that. It was a crazy like blowout win, like game 2 or game 3 or something like that. And just being like, cool. Well, that's my memory of homecoming is that happening, even though I don't care about sports, just like that game playing at the nice steak restaurant we were at kind of thing. But yeah. So yeah, this like just didn't hold up for me. We talked about before, it is very interesting seeing Disney lean so heavily into like the kind of the faith-based market. Of this film.
that was jarring when Martha gets up and says, "I'm a person of faith," and I'm like, hold up, what movie? Like what?
Yeah,
the 90s were a different time. We weren't dealing with like religious extremism trying to take over the country.
I mean,
Well,
there's obviously some degree
yeah.
of that, like going into a movie called Angels in the Outfield,
For
where the
sure.
whole marketing has been, oh, Christian angels are helping these baseball players.
God has answered a child's
Yeah.
prayer and is going to help the Angels win baseball games
Yeah.
to help make his family whole.
Yeah, that was your the in our first recording. Your gripe was
That's still my biggest
that he
gripe.
helps
He helps
that-
him cheat.
that they help him cheat, and why don't they help any other kid who
Yeah.
prayed for his baseball team to do well? It's like because he's not praying because he doesn't care about the team actually doing well. He wants his family back together, and
Yeah.
his dad has said that the only way they're going to be back together is if the Angels win the pennant.
Yeah, because his dad's an asshole.
Because his dad sucks.
His dad sucks. And, like, let's be also very fair. His dad, clearly not over the death of the boy's mother.
Yeah.
And is probably highly suicidal at this point.
Yeah.
He comes off as, like, his introduction scene is straight up, like, it's either going to go one way. Either he's so depressed he could die, or he is the most abusive man that's ever lived. Because the moment he has a cigarette that he's smoked all the way down to the stub. He
puts it out on his jeans.
puts
or
it on
whatever,
his jeans. He's in a busted up leather jacket. Gets on it. What happened to the pickup, Dad? Traded it in. Motorbike's better for traveling on the road. And it's like, this guy could be the worst, or he could just be horribly depressed. Based on the fact that he gave up his kid and is not like keeping him to abuse him. He's in the prior, but he still sucks. Like, dads kind of suck in this movie. I mean, granted, there's only 2 dads, and one of them sucks, so half of them suck. Danny Glover becomes a dad at the end and doesn't suck anymore.
Yeah.
Because Angel softened his heart, and he let... I'm joking. It's surprising how religious they get without getting too religious. But it's straight up. It's absolutely awful that like this movie is about angels and God helping cheat at baseball, but only in the American League. Doesn't happen in the National League. Doesn't happen on the American League on the East Coast. Just here, the West Coast teams.
I mean, what team would they help on the East Coast?
Maybe the Mets. Well, the Mets are actually doing really well.
Mets have no religious connotation. It's the Angels, man.
I get that, but at the same time, as a Mets fan, it's like we were doing really well at that time in the 90s, so I don't think we needed the Angels' help, all right? Let's just say winning the pennant wasn't like the highest like hopes we were getting. We were looking at World Series back then, all right? Mm-hmm. I say I was like 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not fully cognizant of baseball.
It's here we go. They could have helped the St. Louis Cardinals. Because Cardinals, just not the bird. Cardinals, the religious
Catholic
hierarchy.
position.
The Catholic position of the Cardinals. There you go.
The second highest position in the Catholic Church.
Yep. That's how I give you the Angels helping the East Coast League.
Yeah, St. Louis with their arch.
Yep. There you go. Anyway. Dumb little thing. Shout outs to JP saying it could happen 7 times over the course of this movie. That's
his catchphrase.
It's a stupid catchphrase. Like, yeah. Yep. That was his catchphrase. Yep,
It's
that's
his
the thing
thing.
they gave him to say.
It's like saying, I have faith. But in a non-religious way, I've been like, it could happen.
Yeah.
It could happen.
Yep.
And guess what? None of those things ever happen.
Yep. You just gotta believe.
Shout out for Martha being like, Martha, are you gonna come with us to live with like rich baseball dad? No.
No, my job is here.
Yeah.
We talked about like if this movie were made today, there'd be some kind of like
redemptive moment for the father.
Yeah, either the father gets a redemptive moment and like partners up with a gender bent manager,
or if we want to get real woke, they both stay men.
Sure, yeah, that could happen. Or you have maybe Martha and Henry pair up at the end
and decide to adopt the kids together. There you go. Yep, could totally do that.
Something to like tie things up in a little bit more of a neat bow. I don't know if I have anything else to really like jump back into on this. It was very much like my memories of this were the trailer of this movie. and I just thought it was 90 minutes of that. So like, yeah, when I rewatched this a few days ago, I was like, oh yeah, that like I had been a little bit prepped for it from a couple weeks ago when we recorded Rookie of the Year, and you guys talked about how like depressing that story was, and I was like, I don't remember that at all. And then yeah, from the off of them being like in a foster home and his dad being such a deadbeat dad, I was like, oh yeah, I completely blacked this out. I don't remember.
They're
any of
riding
this
those
shit at all.
rusty ass rickety bikes
Yeah.
through the worst areas of Los Angeles.
And then yeah, them like sneaking into the tree to watch the game from the tree, and the security guard still being a dick about it. all right, calm down,
you kids
buddy.
got tickets for that tree.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know how a New York street beat cop made it all the way to Los Angeles to be a security guard.
I did like the ongoing, the evolution of the relationship between the kids and their like handler, where he's like, he sits on the nachos and he gets all the mess on him. So he like the next time we see him, he's got a full on raincoat and it's like covered in condiments because he's prepared for it this time around. But yeah, appreciate.
Remember how you're going to fire me on Friday?
I can't fire you. You've got a rapport with them. Yeah.
It's just that look of them. Like that's how I looked after substitute teaching junior high. That's how I looked.
Yeah. Any final thoughts before we move into grading?
No, I think.
Or any favorite moments or any least favorite moments we didn't cover already?
My favorite moments were definitely the weird ass cameos, or not cameos, but weird ass roles of like future Academy Award winning actors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like long term like nerd film actors. You have. This is a crazy cast. Like the cast of this it's insanely stacked, and all the best people are bit roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Again, very early in their careers, but they got a Disney film under their belt, and boom, off to the races for them.
Tony Danza plays Mel, who we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, like this being a weird thing where like Tony Danza's kind of at like the peak of his career really at this point, and like even that like.
I think he's on the downward peak of that.
I mean, this is basically right after Who's the Boss is wrapping up. So,
so he's like we're talking early 90s. Who's the Boss is wrapped up.
Yeah.
He's doing a couple movies, and this is basically the like riding off into the sunset for his career for the most part.
That's what I'm saying. Is like, but like, I mean, Who's the Boss still being like the height of his powers, really. Like this feels like a very small role compared to that. And maybe it's just like in comparison to like the other pitchers in all of these other baseball movies.
I would say that's the case, yeah.
Because it's very much like he's like, as it is, both him and Neil McDonough are pitchers on this team.
Yeah.
And both of them get like more or less equal screen time. Neil McDonough has a lot more dumb, goofy stuff where he's like, he can't figure out what his like pitching routine needs to be in. He's constantly throwing in like a new superstition to it or whatever, but
also
like,
he's chewing way too much freaking bubble gum.
Yeah. Whereas like Tony Danza is just kind of like there, far past his prime baseball player, has like 2 games that he really plays. Like he has like the one where the Angels were like really helping him to like kick his career off after hasn't played in this decade or hasn't started in this decade. And then like the end game, and obviously he plays more in between there and the Angels help him out, but it's like, yeah, it's almost the like the Christopher Lloyd line of like, yeah, he's going to be one of ours in 6 months, cancer from all the smoking or whatever. Like, it's like they had to add that to make the character mean something, to make Tony Danza's time playing the role a little bit more worthwhile or something.
I guess,
like that.
maybe, yeah.
It just, like, it just struck me as like what a weird thing for, like, to be a Tony Danza role kind of thing. But
it really is. Like, you'd expect it to be bigger based off of, like, where he's at in his career, but also at the same time, like, this movie is mostly just Danny Glover's film.
I mean, yeah, I think that's also it, is, like, if you look at, like, the marketing stuff for this, it's Danny Glover, Christopher Lloyd, and Tony Danza are the pictures on the, like, on the artwork and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, no, this is Danny Glover, and then the others are very, like, minor things comparatively.
Christopher Lloyd as Al is in the, like, has, and all
he has
the
little
scenes,
pop-ups, but
he has little pop-ups, and he has, I think, 3 scenes with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character.
Mm-hmm.
One to explain that yes, these are angels. Yes, you are the only one who can see me. The second one where he shows up in the soda.
Yeah.
And the
Hey, don't tell more people about us. You already weren't supposed to tell them.
yeah, the third one is when he shows up at the very end to say we can't help this
Yep.
game. Anytime he shows up besides that is to
It's like in montage.
in montages. Yeah, that's the only time he shows up. So it's like he's not in this movie a lot. Tony Danza's not in this movie a lot. Danny Glover is in this movie a ton. It really is about Danny Glover and these two kids, and they don't sell it as that in the trailers or anything. They make it seem like baseball is going to be a bigger part of this movie, but really it's about the human story of these boys and this man becoming a family by the end of the movie. So in reality, it's like not really that much of a sports movie.
Yeah.
Sports is just the vehicle for it.
Yep.
Also, the Disney had to do something with their ownership in the Angels.
Well, they didn't. They didn't have an ownership in the Angels for another couple years. After
Oh, that's
this.
true, huh? Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the trivia. Both times I've said it to you tonight, Cameron.
I got confused, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we also talked like they were just big into Anaheim
they were
sports early because
yeah.
they also, of course, the Mighty Ducks right around this time they got very invested in.
They got heavily. Oh well, no, it's because the Angels. The reason I got confused because Walt Disney sat on the board of the Angels
Yeah.
and everything. So Disney has had like an investment in the Angels since the beginning. But I mentioned earlier, like Anaheim for a period of time, especially in the '90s, was trying to like differentiate themselves from LA sports and be like Anaheim sports. So that's why they were like the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, the Anaheim Angels, they try to really push the Anaheim style of
Which
that.
at least makes way more sense than the Los Angeles Angels, because I will always think how stupid it is that it's the Angels.
Yep.
Cool. It's like calling Table Mesa, but here we are in Arizona, and that's a thing that exists.
Correct.
Anyway. All right, well, let's dive into the report card. We grade from A+ to F. What do you want to give the grade for Angels in the Outfield here, Cameron?
I think it's like a B, close to a B minus, but I think overall, me coming into it and being like, oh, I like this a lot more than I remember, it's a B for me.
It's a C minus for me. I won't go full like D+ for the meme kind of thing, but yeah, no, it's a C minus. This really didn't hit for me. It was a like, oh, this is like, and it's not on Joseph Gordon-Levitt's side, but like JP's not a strong child performer, so that suffers especially compared to like Rookie of the Year and stuff.
For sure.
And so much of the movie being on the kids in this one. And then yeah, just it doesn't have enough of the like fun baseball stuff for me for it to be a fun sports movie. Especially as somebody who just doesn't care about baseball in general.
That's fair.
So yeah. Well, there you go. Extra credit. Other suggestions if you like this. We have The Sandlot, which was also coincides with episode 213 of that D+ show. The Mighty Ducks, episode 67 of that D+ show. D2, The Mighty Ducks, episode 68. Rookie of the Year, our last episode 229. The Big Green. Heavyweights, 2 episodes ago, episode 228. Man of the House. And Blank Check, which coincides with episode 74. That was like one of our last episodes right before the pandemic, I think.
I
Blank
think
Check. Because I remember we had our friends from 6-1 Indie on for that one.
Oh, wow, yeah, that was a long time ago, man.
And then also I will throw out here the aforementioned College Humor Dropout sketch on YouTube. You can go watch 30 for 30, Angels in the Outfield. Fun little less than 5-minute thing, I think. Extracurriculars. You watch anything else on Disney Plus this week, Cam?
No, and I'm super sad to hear that The Acolyte's not getting a season 2.
Yeah, that got pulled, and if fears are to be warranted, and there is precedent for it, you might want to watch The Acolyte before they pull it from for tax purposes or something like they did with Willow.
It was residuals. They were avoiding residuals to
Sure.
the actors and writers.
Yeah.
Yeah, super not great that Disney's like deleting and creating lost media.
Yeah.
For sure, The Acolyte. If you are at all, even if you're just like, I want to see what people were upset about, watch that show because
Well, they were upset about stuff they didn't even watch because they didn't watch the show.
That's the point, Trevor. I was trying to make. Like, if you want to hear what's all the hubbub about, go watch that show. Because honestly, we both really enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it. I think more than Trevor did, but
Yeah.
it has some of the best lightsaber combat. It has one of the most interesting, like overall arching stories as far as the Jedi Order is concerned. It really sets the tone of what the High Republic is supposed to be era wise. And it's an absolute shame that a bunch of dick chuds on the internet, you know, created enough negative press about it. I guess.
I mean, it's a mix of that. Yeah, that's always like for me. It's much more. It's disappointing that Lucasfilm and Disney don't want to back it, don't want to get behind the vision and the idea.
Yeah.
This very much strikes me as like kowtowing in the same way that they kowtowed to like Last Jedi butt munchery,
Gave us
and yeah, just didn't.
the film equivalent of abortion. That is the Rise of Skywalker.
I wouldn't go that far, but
I'm pretty sure we all went that far when we did it for the
no.
Star Wars.
I gave Rise of Skywalker a 7. It's a bad Star Wars movie, but it's still a fun enough movie,
That's
fun
fair.
enough time. So yeah, no, I don't go as far as to say an abortion of something, Cameron. I think that's a thing that we've talked about too many times that you go straight to that and maybe don't need to.
That's fair. That's fair.
Well, I have watched a few other things on Disney Plus this last week.
Tell us about him, Trevor.
In particular, I sat down a couple nights ago and watched the Disney Legends presentation from the recent D23, where they inducted the new batch of Disney Legends, including people like Harrison Ford,
Cool.
Jamie Lee Curtis, James Cameron, Angela Bassett. On the costume designer side, they gave Colleen Atwood the first costume design Disney Legend status.
As she deserves.
As having worked on a number of things there. Miley Cyrus, James L. Brooks. One of the coolest ones was a woman named Martha Blanding, who basically has just worked at the parks for many, many years, was the first African-American tour guide back in the day that got hired on, became like a VIP tour guide and kind of worked her way up to like merchandising sales and stuff like that in just Disneyland kind of corporate. So she was made an honor, a legend in honor of her many, many years of great service. That was cool. Frank Oz, always a joy to see him. Mark Henn, another kind of unsung person on the animation side of things, animator that he was basically introduced and brought out to the stage by the actresses behind Ariel, Mulan, Belle, Tiana, and who's the fifth one? I've forgotten. Jasmine, because he was kind of known as like the princess animator of the 90s and 2000s, and that was kind of his bent, was kind of creating those princesses and those characters. So it was cool seeing him get honored. Joe Rohde, who I love from the Imagineering side of things, kind of the big spearhead of Animal Kingdom. And all of the conservationist efforts behind Animal Kingdom. Kelly Ripa, if you're a fan of what was Regis and Kelly, then Ryan and Kelly, and then now Kelly and Mark, her husband. As my family grew up watching like Regis and Kathy Lee every day, I was like seeing that she's kind of now got that lineage. Cool.
Good for her.
Steve Ditko, honored posthumously. And yeah, I think I mentioned James Cameron. Angela Bassett, yeah. And John Williams was, unfortunately, he wasn't there, but he was kind of the last recipient, last honoree. So, yeah, it was a cool little 2.5 hour-ish ceremony. One of my favorite things of it was probably Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, the thing opens up, and it's like Jamie Lee Curtis and Harrison Ford are there. Harrison Ford's immediately kind of like the first one up and done, and then, like, he never comes back to his seat. But Jamie Lee Curtis, like, they're cheering for all these other people throughout the entire thing. Really cool to see her showing her support throughout the presentation. And to his credit, Harrison Ford did come back at the end of the thing to be the one, or one of the ones alongside Kathleen Kennedy to like induct John Williams. But yeah, John Williams. Not there, unfortunately. But yeah, Disney Legend presentation. It was cool. It was just kind of like they took the presentation that they had done at D23 and just made it available to everybody on Disney Plus. And then I also sat down because I don't think I'd ever actually watched this before. I'd seen like pieces and clips of it and everything like that, but I sat down and watched 10 Things I Hate About You.
Hey, awesome! That's a great movie.
Kind of continuing on with the JGL love. Yeah, it was fun. Like I like if I haven't watched the movie, I've seen 90% of the movie already. So in clips and stuff like that. So nothing brand new, but it was very much like it was just constantly a damn. We lost Heath Ledger way too young.
Absolutely, we did.
Like
absolutely, you watch him in anything.
Yeah. Like this, the first First Night, yeah. Though like First Night being the thing that I always like think of him from because it's probably the first thing I ever saw him in. Just being like, yeah, he was real fucking good, and just like effortless charisma. And Julia Stiles is great in this too.
Oh, absolutely! Everybody's fantastic in that movie. Shout out to what's his name, my old friend from elementary school's cousin who was in Camp Nowhere
and Andrew Keegan.
Yep.
He's the big bad jerk guy in this one.
Yep. He's fantastic. Everybody in that movie is fantastic. It's an absolute stellar movie. Everybody should watch it. Timmy of the Shrew retold as high school. Really launched the redoing Shakespeare's high school trend that we saw throughout the 90s and early aughts.
Yep. Again, you had like this. You had you had so many other things. Yeah. She's the Man.
She's
Amanda
the Man.
Bynes.
There you go.
It was the 12th Night.
Yeah, it was just 10 Things I Hate About You, man. And Heath Ledger has been fantastic in everything. I was not as big into First Night because I wasn't a fan of the musical aspect of it.
Oh, I loved it.
I know a lot of people did. I did not. I've come around on that a lot since then. I was
especially because like the big number in there is Bohemian is We Will Rock You.
Yeah,
it's like I would expect a queen head like you to love that.
You would think so, and I have come around on it since then. But I was so pretentious with my head up my own ass back then.
Oh, that's
to the point. Right. Yep. So there you go. That's the problem. Problem was we're talking proto hipster Cameron, who was a hipster before hipsters were a thing. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to that aspect of it, like I had my head up my own ass. It's a great film. It has like an incredible cast.
Yeah, exactly. That's like also the first thing I remember seeing Alan Tudyk in. Yep. He's great. Paul Bettany's in there.
As Chaucer.
Chaucer. That was like I remember having like just read about Geoffrey Chaucer and the Canterbury Tales and stuff like that, and then like seeing this movie and being like, I get the references the character is making because I know the Canterbury Tales, and I love that like when he goes off and he's like, I will destroy you, like your professions in literature for 1,000 years kind of thing. It's like, hell yeah, you do that, Chaucer. Now put some clothes on, please.
I was really wanting more of a straightforward story at that point. I just read like Ivanhoe and a bunch of other like books from the time period, or like through the medieval era. And so I was like, wanting something a bit more straightforward back then. Looking back on it now, I think it's a fantastic movie. I think it's absolutely stellar. People should love it. It's and they do. First Night, he was, and also his part in the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, fantastic. Before they unfortunately had to do like a Knight's
Tale is what.
A Knight's Tale. That's right.
First Night was Sean Connery.
Yeah, well, First Night's Sean Connery. Yeah, that's right. Oh gosh, yeah. No, it was Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. It was his last film he ever worked on.
Yeah, the one that they basically ended up like splitting his role into
Johnny Depp, and Jude Law.
Yeah.
I will say particularly about that is also the movie that ended up like taking his life because for people who don't like are not familiar, you shouldn't go see 3 different doctors on 3 different continents and take all of the medications that they all give you, not knowing that you had already seen other doctors and were also taking those other medications. Don't do that.
I feel like that's not a common enough thing that people are going to really be thrust into.
That's why I kind of like stopped myself in a moment. I was like, just be careful with prescription medication especially when you've been sick. That's all I want to say.
Yeah.
Because Heath Ledger is the most prominent person who's died from that, but people die from that a lot every year without realizing the mistakes they're making. So just always be careful.
10 Things I Hate About You. good, fun, holds
Fantastic
up.
film.
I mean, definitely has like a lot of problem
Oh.
like
Oh,
references and like not great lines and stuff like that are a little
yeah.
problematic.
It's
in
a movie of the time, for
Yeah.
sure.
And obviously, like there's just a lot of ingrained sexism in the film, but
Yeah. Also, I believe that's also part of the intent with like the whole taming
yeah,
of the shrew.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But still, it was a fun watch. Yeah, I think there were just a couple of things where it's like, oh yeah, that'd be a thing to just edit out, edit out that line, cut away from that.
Yep.
Maybe don't have a underage actress, or I'm sure Julia Stiles wasn't underage, but don't have like a 17-year-old character flashing a teacher to help a guy get out of school in detention or whatever.
Yep.
That's a
Yeah.
little awkward.
Yeah, that's not great. There's some stuff in that movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some stuff for sure.
Yep. Yeah. So shout out to those things on the as just the other things I sat down and watched this week. Well, that's gonna do it for this take two at our rundown of Angels in the Outfield here. Thank you,
Our
Cam,
comment.
for sitting down to cover it for me a second time, since our first episode, got basically scrapped halfway through. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you'll give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a massive shout out to everybody right now who is getting geared up for PAX West. Trevor and I will not be attending PAX West this year, obviously for purposes of just monetary purposes overall and like time. Once again ran into Trevor's conference, his work conference, and so that took a lot of his vacay time out because he decided he wanted to explore DC, and I 100% support that and I'm not going because I'm unemployed and kind of broke. So,
And I also didn't want to immediately spend a whole bunch of money on another, not cross country flight, but another flight and weekend trip
and hotel and food and everything.
Yeah, exactly. All the PAX costs it adds up, and when back to back trips is not ideal for this lifestyle. Yeah. So
I flew for almost nothing last year when I went to PAX West and had a budget and immediately like started burning through that budget faster than I was remembering. It was the first time I'd been to an event or like since COVID, and I forgot how quickly money burns when you are like traveling. Mm-hmm. So heads up to everybody who's going to be out there. Massive shout out to everybody. We love you all so much. If you listen to this hour-long podcast about Angels in the Outfield to hear this, thank you so much for that too. We love all of you. Sad we're not going to be there, but look forward to better things coming up in the future.
Yeah, especially shout out to our friends over at What's Good Games, as this will kind of be their big like live in person send off. At the they're doing a yet another Square Enix party for Life is Strange Double Exposure as kind of their joint PAX party, as they often have in the past, partnered with Life is Strange things. And yeah, it like when they announced that they're going to be kind of sunsetting their stuff here in September, and that was going to be their last thing, I was like, oh, that's the thing that has more than anything made me want to try and do like a last minute trip to PAX just to go support them and see them, since I haven't seen them since pre-pandemic. But still, all the best to them, and congrats on a great run that they've had over the years. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey on Twitter. I will shout out, we didn't do that nerdy site show this last week because I was a little sick. You can probably still hear a little bit of it coming home from DC this last week, but we'll be back hopefully next week for that. And so shout out instead to Cameron's streams, which still occasionally happen. He's a little less regular now that he's doing some substitute teaching work and stuff, but go check those out on the YouTube channel. And I think there's also Twitch VODs now. I think you're doing Restream to get both of them.
Two Twitch VODs now.
There you go.
So you can go watch those.
Or
watch them on YouTube, probably a better quality experience.
Next week we'll wrap up our 90s month here with Mrs. Doubtfire. So stay tuned for that. And then I got to figure out what the hell we're going to do in September.
Yeah.
Or even if we're going to keep things going in September, because with you moving out is going to be a harder podcast to try and manage and wrangle. So we might end up having an impromptu hiatus or something like that. We'll
Maybe.
see.
We'll
Who
see.
knows? But yeah, you can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please remember to like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other. Class dismissed. And it could happen.